excellent presentation, and you kept the highest level standards of your colleagues yesterday. So this is something what I put already number one in my conclusions. I will present at the end that Ukraine has such rich human capital. And this is something, if you will utilize it, and you demonstrate, I mean, there are not only, you know, in business or at academia, but also in politician, in you know, your thinking. I wish our finance minister in Poland, or, you know, in US, the Secretary of Treasury, think this way, you know. I'm so happy to hear that. If I may come back to, and this is what is important, this priority you mentioned, so that the war and the crisis is not excuse for reforming. This is what you are coming back. This is nice echo of what Professor Porter said. I mean, reforming institutions. The rule of law is the base for local, domestic, and for foreign investors. This is something we need to create this environment. And everything is here in the recommendations. So I am very pleased to hear that. If I may come back to my slides for a second, I would like to, I guess it's here. Okay, there is a panel. Oh no, probably. Alexei, could you help me with this? This is not what I wanted to show.
You made it with the question, but these are not slides. It just.
Okay, yeah, I just not, you know, we can go with the questions now, and then I will. I hope I will recover my my PowerPoint somewhere, and then I made these questions shorter. But before, I wanted to show, to keep on the track of this innovation in academia, how we connect economic development, growth, with social and environmental issues, to show my colleagues' presentation. But anyway, Alexei, could you find my presentation and show the slides?
Just a second.
Okay, good. So we have excellent assistants, and we used to work with Alexei in previous projects. I know that he is very able academician also with technology. So anyway, what is important that we need to include, okay, next, could we go? Next. Okay, so we, next, okay. Well, let's come to the questions, you know, I mean, the up. Let's go up, and I will come, because somebody asked me, okay, 4 basic panel questions. Then I will come after a summary to the issue of contributions. So there are 2 opposing views, as some of you have already mentioned, and then some of you gave already answers, like OKSANA last time. But I will go around Robin. If you could say in 1 minute or so, you know, what is your take on 2 opposing views to overcome current COVID and the following recession? Should we speed up economic growth at any cost, any social or environmental costs, or we should include to the recovery plan also objectives, social and environmental, particularly climate change, biodiversity destruction, and so on. So let's start with PIET. You know, as we, what is your take?
No, I mean, Chair, clearly the temptation in a crisis is to start thinking short-term and quick returns. And then later you start to pay a huge price for that thinking. So good leaders in a time of crisis would clearly say, A looks like a very quick solution, but I can tell you, it's going to come back and bite you. And the reason for that is quite simple. There is no way in which, and my colleagues have said it so eloquently, whether you call it a sustainable competitiveness or OKSANA idea of human development, you simply cannot break up the idea that I can have a fantastic GDP growth, but in the meantime, I do not look after my ecological capital or my social capital. To give you a quick example, the biggest platinum mine in the world is in South Africa. They did a fantastic financial job. But they did not perceive their social responsibility outside the gates of the mine well. And one morning, 4 or 5 years ago, when they woke up, the people just rose up and they closed the mine down for months at ease. And the reason is simple. You look at speed up your GDP, but you forget that you've got environmental and social responsibility. It's a temptation, Chair, but please don't go for short-term thinking now. We have to use this crisis for its better a future and not do a short-term job.
Thank you, PIET. Marzena?
I fully agree what PIET has said already, that we cannot, we have to think about not about short term, but about medium or long term. And that's why my understanding is that we are aware of the social and environmental of the importance of social and environmental issues. So they should be included in the policies. At least in the European Union, there is a Green Deal policy, a new Green Deal, which tackles these problems, and we are trying to find solutions. But what we have to remember that EU, or even our opinion and our discussion and commitment by big players in the world economy is not enough. All countries should understand these problems, because it's a global problem. It's not a problem of the country or region or even a couple of wealthy countries. It's a problem of all countries. That's why some kind of open global discussion and global commitment should be made. And we know that it's not that easy when we look at this climate discussions and climate agreement, that some big important countries do not want to follow this idea. And there is a temptation, as Pete said, to think about short term and to guarantee speeding up of growth, but exclude the social and environmental things. But in the longer term, it's not worth. That's why we have to be responsible and sustainable. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Marzena. Oksana, what is your take? Click the unmute. Yes.
Yes. Well, obviously, on the speed up the economic growth and social environment, it's, I already said, it's all of the above. So the countries should, to the extent possible, try to continue with both policies, and while doing the efforts that needed for the return to the economic growth or increase of the economic growth, they have to keep the social and environmental policies always in mind. Also, what is important, that all the monetary and fiscal stimuluses that work in developed countries, reformed countries, in order to boost the economic growth, in some countries, they can only add to the budgetary problems. So the instruments to speed up the economic growth should be used also wisely. With regard to the national states protectionist or the international cooperations, I mean, clearly, I think the international cooperation would benefit the majority of the countries. Again, the protectionist policies might create some benefits for the countries that can afford them in the short run, but we all have to remember that this crisis, as any other crises, will be over. And we have to apply not only the short term or the crisis type of planning or post-crisis type of planning, but also keep in mind the midterm and long-term goals each of the countries have. And similar advice actually can be given to the companies, because a lot of companies, a lot of corporations, a lot of small and medium-sized businesses right now are focusing only on how to deal with the crisis, how to get through the next couple of months, how to protect the employees, or how not to close the business. But it's very important at the same time, always think about what is going to be next year and this in 3-year perspective, how this crisis will affect. And the worst thing that the company or the country can do is to continue business as usual, because again, it's not going to be the same. And the quarantine that put a lot of people working from home, some people will stay working from home. This is going to be the new reality. So, and I will not use the time to explain the policy options, as I already have given it in my opening statement.
I think we might have lost the moderator. I can't see him on the screen.
Zbigniew, are you with us? Are you with us? Zbigniew, we lost him, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Zbigniew, hello. Maybe he can rejoin soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
not with us.
Yes, we lost him.
Marzena, you are closest to be ZBIGNIEW. Can you just pick up the panel?
Absolutely, I can. We in fact already started discussing, OKSANA already started discussing protectionist policies, but let's go back to evidence about create shared value, how competitive are companies that are follow the shared value initiative. Do you have any evidence from your countries? Maybe PIET could share with us some evidence about shared value and successes in implementing shared value for competitiveness.
Yeah.
Can you share with us your experience, maybe your research?
Yeah. No, we do a bit of research, empirical research on investments, but I am a bit skeptical about this notion that there's a direct financial link between a company that is what we call generally responsible. Because normally, I mean, you can be as responsible and socially involved as you wish. If you've got a bad product and bad service, it will not work. So I think the two is very, oh, there's our moderator. The two,
I am back, sorry.
We were our ship was taken over by Prof. Marzena.
I know that you will manage, you know. Thank you very much for understanding. Go ahead, Pete. Yeah.
No, I'm a little bit skeptical. I mean, in cases where you compare, say, a unit trust investment on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and you look at what we would call responsible investment unit trust, there you find a 2 to 3% better return over time compared to the peers. But I'm very careful to make a general statement that say companies that are responsible and socially involved will also outperform those in the, because I mean, let us be honest, we have a very big tobacco company in South Africa, which is a global one. I won't want to name them. Their cost to the public health system is massive, but they are hugely successful. And they pay a lot of taxes to the government. So in a way, we could call them a company that is not in the sense that we would think adding at least to social and public good, but they add enormous private good. So it breaks this link of, you know, CSV equals high economic returns. I'm skeptical, but that does not mean, Mr. Chair, that we should not keep pushing. Even for those companies that are in, let's say, oil production or gas production, to diversify their portfolio and assist the world to move towards greener energy. They have a responsibility. I did a workshop the other day with a company that is absolutely marvelous in the market. Their share price is loved by all people, and they are in coal to liquid fuel extraction. They are brilliant. My question to them is, what contribution do you make in your budget to diversify your portfolio in Africa, solar energy and sun and wind energy? And the answer to that was, we will not be there in 50 years. Our bonuses are paid at the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you, Piet. I understand you moved to the second question. Good. Marzena, what is your take?
Yes, what I think, the question is a little bit provocative, because you are asking to have hard evidence that firms are competitive. Yes, they are competitive, but do we have a hard evidence that they are competitive thanks to having this shared value concept? Difficult to answer. So this question is provocative, and it's really difficult to answer, because in fact you have to say that shared value concept is better than different concepts, not looking at this shared value at all, or CSR as you wish. Then you have to compare the same company with in two different situations, which is impossible. But my understanding is that it is something. So we already have some hard evidence about CSR. It's more difficult with shared value because it's quite new concept and you need more time to do research on this. But my intuition tells me that it is anyway a good idea, and after some time probably we will have some hard evidence about successes of shared value implementation. But for the time being, I cannot give you just a real example. I know about some companies in Poland who are trying to implement it, but it's too early to discuss hard evidence. So there are some evidence that, like with CSR, that it is beneficial for both company and society. The question is it beneficial also for the whole country? Because definitely employees of the company can be the first ones who can feel this beneficial shared value result. What about the rest of the world, the city, the region? So we need some time to do research on this. So I'm not skeptical. I feel that it's a good idea and we need such kind of concept, because at least it allows the companies to think about the stakeholders, about the people who are employees and other people who are in the city, in the region, etc., and also to recognize the needs of people. So it's something for the beginning, and then the key thing is how to implement it to be beneficial. So as a concept, I like it very much, but I cannot give you now concrete examples of concrete firms because it's too early to have such discussion.
Thank you, Marzena. Oksana, what is your take?
Well, as Marzena said, we don't have sufficient data yet, but in general, I would like to comment on the concept itself. I think the shared value concept is a very beautiful thing that has to be developed, you know, and it should generate, because it has to do with the motivation. I mean, when we think about innovations, when we think about the next generations, and clearly they are very different from us, and they grow in the environment where the social connections are different. Their take on the professional development is much different from, you know, even my generation and older generations who had a different approach. You know, one job for life, maybe a couple of jobs. Now we are changing into the environment where people will have to choose what they want to do, but they have to be prepared, change professions on some, maybe even on the annual basis. So it all will present a new challenge for corporations and for the governments also, how to motivate people. So shared value concept provides the basis for this new motivation for companies, for people that work, for stakeholders, for communities. For example, in Ukraine, one of the very successful reforms is the reform of decentralization. We actually have used the Polish model. Of course, I mean, we have developed it for the using the Ukrainian specifics, but again, in Ukraine, this notion of local community is very strong. And this reform worked. I mean, first we started with budgetary decentralization, and we have given portion of the taxes, of the personal income tax and companies' profit tax to the local level. and the land and real estate tax is 100% goes only to the local budget. Now, 4 years after the start of the reform, we can definitely say it worked. We already see the emergence of the very capable local communities, which actually do better job in investment attraction, because now they know that every job that is created in their region actually benefits their local budget. And the notion of the shared value in the decentralization is that notion in the state finances, but for the companies, for the corporate sector, this is also the notion how to get all the people together to work in the same direction. Now, I'm also a practitioner, so I understand that in the ideal world, that would work like that. We know it's not going to be like that. And probably there will be corporations that are going to be more profitable without this concept. But I think as we should also view the shared value concept as the public good. And we have to promote it on the governmental level, because it will help the governments, which will always have scarce resources in all of the countries, to actually get some of the services done and built in the local communities without even the government interference.
Chair, may I quickly just respond?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
To the, I am quite excited about the concept of shared value, but as it was developed by Porter and Kramer originally, there's a very, very big deficit in the concept, and this is the following. If you create shared value from the perspective that you apply capitalist, their word, capitalist thinking to social problems, then obviously you create greater efficiencies, perhaps. You can make profit for the company in an area where they would not have been. You can uplift inner cities to better places. But the problem is there are certain public and social and common goods that cannot be created in that way. And they would then fall outside of the creation of shared value, because in the original concept, the value that is shared is not shared value unless it adds to the bottom line of the company. And my point is, and that's where OKSANA's view is so exciting to me, we need to expand the concept to include common social and public goods that may not be able to be run on a profit basis, but it still adds shared value. So if shared, that's my point.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good addition. I agree with Marzenna that we don't have that type of hard evidence, because this is a relatively new concept. But at least if we look at the sustainable companies index on New York Stock or Toronto, they are performing pretty well. Usually in the longer period, you know, they are overperforming the typical average companies. A few years ago, I checked Toronto Stock Exchange. They were performing like about 15%. I mean, the average rate was higher than the average, what was really a good sign. But I have good news for you. I found it, I was checking if I would be able to get access to my slides. I found it companies, 5 top companies in shared values. I don't see my slides here.
In the meantime, can I just comment what you have said?
But anyway, I can read, you know, anyway, so I can, okay, they are coming. Okay, here, oh, just come back. Oh yeah, here are the top creating shared values company, according to IE, the Spanish university in last year. So Alibaba was first for creating this autonomy software which could help you, for instance, to make poverty maps. Then Bank of America, which heavily invest in green initiatives and renewable energy. They are really pioneering for years. Then a famous Swedish company, ABB, in energy, developing charging station for electric vehicles. And then Weight Watchers. They moved, you know, just from the very traditional, you know, assortment, just products. They are providing also holistic services, how to live to fostering your health and wellness, you know, in harmony with the environment, which is really good. And finally, the Indian company, Reliance Jio, they introduced, they created the business in 2016 with 4G cell phones, very fast, very cheap, and they gave access to internet. And this is something for, I mean, when I was in India, I was surprised by two factors: the depth of the poverty and incremental entrepreneurship. So if you give people the access, you know, the tools, you know, hey, they might be doing pretty well on this. And then these are the examples of the top companies. And then the next slide, if I could, I asked yesterday's moderator, Fernando, who mentioned they made research on manufacturing. And then if I could move to the next slide, and then he sent me this morning 4 examples of creating share value clusters, which are very competitive. One is Wellness Valley from Emilia-Romagna region, offering well-being services, creating ecosystems of health. Then we have Acti green cluster in Cyprus, that improving the resilience, particularly by empowering women entrepreneurship. Next, please. And there are one company which I was familiar with when I used to live in Minnesota, good company which create skills for young people who are facing unemployment, in particular in the regions which are deficient in skilled labor. And finally, it's MSME company from India, introducing sustainable development clusters to local communities. Again, you know, this is something what Oksana mentioned. If we will get access, I mean, comparing with advanced societies, small capital, but for those people, you know, this level of income, it's huge achievement. So these are the examples from the cluster. And I did also research a few years ago, and I discovered, next slide, please, also in aerospace clusters, the share values. First, when I still reside part-time now in Washington aerospace clusters, there are 5 cluster organizations. Next, please. Next slide. And then they create the following examples. We have over 1,300 companies. So they created in aerospace training and research centers in one of the suburbs. And then what is very interesting, there was a combined investment from university and business and state, and create joint center for aerospace technology innovation. Just resolving unresolved problems. Just, you know, very creative, 12 PhD students and professors and 12 top engineers from Boeing or from the cluster, but Boeing is predominant. It's about 75% of the revenues of the whole cluster. And so this is a good example. So we have dozen training centers, internship and joint development of curricula, business and academia. And what came out from our research, they highly value the cluster as a shared value, because they are getting provision of fast information and trusted information. So it came out from the interviews we interviewed over close to 300 companies during our research a few years ago. And then they really appreciated this. Okay, so let's move to the next question. It will be, oh, sorry, I forgot about Poland. How could I forget my country? Alexi, could you move back? Because I wanted to show also the shared values which are close. I mean, we did research in Aviation Valley in southeastern part of Poland. See, close to Ukraine. Next slide, please. And then we found it, the following examples. The companies and academia, they created our own consortium to enhance education, curricula, and research in the universities. Okay, so the next one later on, but could you come back to the previous one? Okay, then they created 12 business centers. We will come back. Okay, here, let's stay here. And then they developed the flying physics, which practitioners are explaining theoretical concept. And for the youngest children from primary school, they created Children's University. So to get them involved and interested in aerospace, in space in general, to boost their thinking and ambitions, I think that they provide also for the training for teachers and create this foundation for support. What is very important, and this is what I'm glad I'm coming back to Marzenna's slide, which she put this relational capital up front as an input. The most difficult in creating this shared value was building these relations, building social capital. It took time, you know, to overcome mistrust between business and academia and government, because government was also involved, and non-governmental organization. It's time consuming, but if you build solid social capital, you could succeed. Okay, let's move to the third question.
May I intervene?
Okay.
Just one comment. I liked your examples very much. They are great, but these are examples of shared value. These
Yes.
are not examples that shared value helped firms to be more competitive.
Oh, there are.
But it's not just causation. It's maybe, it also might be correlation that firms who are using shared value, they are better, they have better performance at the stock exchange and also here. So to really to understand and to say about hard evidence, about causation that shared value help to be better, to perform better, we need more research. So from this research point of view, we still need to do more research and to find appropriate methodology to do research on this topic, because we have great examples. And then also you identified shortages of relational capital and problems that are related with shared value implementation, but we still need some more sound methodology to find out this causation. That's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marzenna. I hope that our network could help us to move this agenda further, because this is really something what we need, particularly to overcome the crisis. We need to have a lot of investment in shared values, because we need to combine the new investment development with healthcare, with the declining environment. We have all over smog in big cities in Poland and so on and so on. And then this is require a new way of thinking, and we need to have more precise measurements too. Okay, let's move to the next question related to the issue. If I may have my slides, okay, we see. Okay.
It was the protectionist issues, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, okay, then yeah, this is something what I would like to just, these are examples I have already mentioned here. Two opposing views on the crisis, how to overcome. Should we use, what doesn't work? Should we do this, leave the countries alone? They should tackle both. We hear, you know, very often that only national state could resolve the crisis issue, particularly the COVID crisis, or we should have more international cooperation within the regions and also worldwide to overcome the crisis and the recession and the climate change and so on. What would be your take? Particularly, we see, you know, in COVID, a lot of these pushes toward just don't look what the others are doing. Do what national government think we should do. We have serious problems in Poland these days. We have serious problems in the United States, which really broke the ties. I mean, not the United States, but the current administration with the World Health Organization. And anyway, so I would like to start answers to this question in opposite direction. I will ask Oksana to talk first.
To pick up where I have ended a little bit before, clearly the protectionism, I think, is a dead end. So while it may benefit countries in the short run, while it can, especially, it's a very easy instrument and very easy decision to sell to the population, especially in the time of virus-related crisis, because when we are closing the countries for the quarantine, it seems like a very natural, this discussion is already happening with the stakeholders, with the population, with the travel bans. So it comes as the natural kind of discussion about the ban on, you know, let's buy Ukrainian, or let's only, again, while on the short term, it might all this temporarily ban to export something or to focus more on the local production, that clearly negatively impacts the competition. And I think on the long run, everything that impacts negatively competition disservices the growth and the economy development. It's even more so in the innovation economies and the digital economies, or the economy, you know, post-industrial economy 4.0, whatever we call it. Because when you use the protectionist, then of course, first of all, as the country, then you get the response measures from other countries. It affects the international cooperation severely. And I believe that the majority of countries, especially the emerging economies, economies that have the potential to grow rapidly and do grow rapidly, they do need capital, but they also need technologies, and they also need a lot of inputs to add to this growth. So I think the protectionist policies, while they can generate some, you know, short-term benefits, and I honestly, I do not believe even in those. I believe in the midterm range, and especially in the long term, this is a dead end, and it will affect adversely the economy. So the focus, I think, for any country that wants to see itself successful, not only in this century, but in the centuries to come, and wants to plan the strategy for the generations to come, the international cooperation, openness of the economy, increase of the export, and make the, of course, with all the protection of the national security, protection of the economic security. I mean, that goes without saying. I'm not propagating here the, you know, let's open everything in the countries. But in terms of economic growth and in terms of economy, I'm very inclined to support the international cooperation, and very, very skeptical about the protectionism, which I think is more something from the past if we want to develop into the new innovation stage in the economy.
Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more with you, Oksana. Excellent points. Marzena, what is your take?
I have to add that I'm teaching international economics. And, even when we look at theoretical concepts, we know that there are gains from trade and gains from collaboration. And we even understand that there are really gains in many fields, not only in financial result, but also in other results like innovation, what Oksana mentioned. So I fully agree with Oksana. What I may add to this, I may only look at the darkest scenario when we are not collaborating internationally. So we can stop flow of goods, we can stop flow of services and flow of capital, but if we even stop flow of ideas, that would be a disaster, because in fact we need all these flows. So protectionism, it's not only about trade and about investment, but it's also about open access to ideas and exchange of ideas. So collaboration in all different forms. That's why this relational capital I added to this concept of competitiveness, because I think that we need to build relations, different types of relations. So not only collaborating with foreign countries, but also we should strengthen collaboration even with the country, business with science, politicians with and policymakers with the society, with science. There are discussions about science for policy, what science could do for policy, how you asked in the previous question about the evidence of shared value. Yes, we need such evidence to show that it's worth doing so, it's worth working. So we need collaboration for this. And I think that our network, MOC, it's a great platform for collaborating. And in fact, we know it already because we are members since nearly very beginning in this network, and we see the benefits. So collaboration is needed, so no protectionism. But I also agree with Oksana that collaboration does not mean, discussion about protectionism does not mean that we want to open up everything. We have to be careful, and we have to also look carefully at national strengths. And in some cases, also some kind of protectionism might be justified. For example, when the country wants to build a kind of industry from scratch, it's really difficult to compete. But even if we go for protectionism for a while, that might be only in the short run to help the company or the industry to strengthen. And then let's open up the market and compete freely globally, because there is no choice. We have to collaborate and we have to compete. That's why my peak is definitely no protectionism, but let's say careful analysis what is the best solution for all players. Thank you.
Okay, Pete, this is your take now, and please also combine this with the final statement. I would like to ask everybody. I see our president Irina already joining us, and then so this will be the final stage. You will start summarizing the previous question, and now I mean the recommendations for Ukraine and final statement. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I would not make recommendations for Ukraine.
Suggestions or
what?
what?
The previous Minister of Finance here, I will just shut up. But I just want to say we have a very good relationship with Prof. Irina's business school. We love them very much. We receive their students here. We send students there. Just a good example of cooperation. It doesn't work. Just quickly, Chair, allow me 3 statements. I know our time is running up. protectionism is only good for populistic politics. When Brexit happened, the leaders of the Brexit movement said it is Britain's day of independence. Now, I mean, what nonsense does that make in economic sense? And when the president of the US was elected on the slogan of "Make America Great Again," it makes huge political sense, but it's absolute economic nonsense. It's absolutely technological. Second statement. As an emerging economy, we have to be wise, and I really like my two colleagues. Our textile industry was destroyed by Chinese imports. We need some protection. But clearly, when it comes to something like tourism, on the 27th of March, when the COVID reached South Africa through a tourist, South African citizen that went to Italy to ski, came back, we had to close our borders. What are we doing now, Chair? We try to open our borders as quickly as possible because the third biggest income in our GDP is from tourism. We need that cooperation. And then just lastly, no foreign direct investment in technology enhancements can happen without cooperation. So I'm very much for that. Even as an emerging economy, sometimes we have to fight hard, but unless we go strong in the international community, we cannot go it alone. And I think corporate shared value is going to win the day over the next decade, much, much stronger than in the past. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pete, for your contribution to this session. Marzena? Any final statement, final suggestions for Ukraine? From lessons from Poland?
Uncomfortable situation to talk when Oksana is with us, who was responsible for the building strategy in Ukraine, but maybe some thoughts that might be useful, more general. I think that in Ukraine has the same problems as we all have everywhere. So I already listed the problems in one of my slides, so I don't want to discuss it back, but definitely what we should do, building on the strengths, it's not enough. So definitely your strength is human capital, but it's not enough to build on the strengths only. So as a developing country, emerging economy, let's say, probably a good idea is to think about some kind of niche which you can fill with your competences and which you can strengthen. So not only building on strengths and strengthening the strengths, fighting COVID, the national capital building and shared value implementation, collaboration, all these issues we have discussed, they should be in place everywhere. But also a kind of niche which Ukraine could specialize in terms of international collaboration should be maybe a good hint to discuss and to think. Because you cannot, we agreed in fact that collaboration is needed and we cannot specialize in all the commodities or the issues. We have to specialize in some parts, some special areas. So the discussion might be how to find this niche or niches for Ukraine. And the second thing which goes to my mind is about treating COVID as an opportunity. I liked very much, I even noted it, that what you mentioned, COVID cannot be an excuse to stop warming.
Exactly.
It was really great statement. COVID cannot be an excuse to limit our freedom, to stop collaboration, to do all these things that we do not like, in fact, as citizens, and to stop reforms and to stop executing our rights. So COVID should push us to do better and to do, quoting what you have said, in a different way, things in a different way. I liked it very much. I think it's really important to not to do big, better and faster, but in a different way, to adjust and to start to think, to adjust to new circumstances, which definitely will come after COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Marzena, for your contribution to this panel. Oksana, it's your take. Bravo.
Yes, so again, as I briefly said at the beginning, the question the formula for Ukraine is on the basis of the macro-financial stability, add rule of law, enhance reforms, and add the innovations. And in my closing statement, I would like to focus on the innovations. I think, our forum is called Facing the Future. The recommendation for Ukraine is not to face the future, is to embrace the future. And for example, why I'm focusing a lot on the human capital development, because I believe with innovations, and again, by disrupting our normal life, the virus and the measures to contain the spread of the virus has given us an opportunity to try something that we didn't have either the courage to do before, or it was difficult to do, because again, in healthcare, education, social services, you don't disrupt what works, even though it's not maybe the most efficient thing, but you will never, it's very difficult in a democratic country to say, okay, let's stop this and do something completely different. Now, the virus allowed us to do it. We had months teaching our kids from home. And something like that without the virus, before the virus, would be unheard of. How do you put the 40 million country on online education? But the virus, and again, it showed us where we can do it, how to do it more efficiently, and it showed us it works for some kids, and it works better for some kids than the traditional type. So I think, again, when I talk about innovation, it's not pure digitalization or using the IT or ICT. It's doing the things differently. And I believe for Ukraine, while again, we have to do all of what I have said before, and again, I always strengthen on the rule of law because I believe it's a precondition for everything. But I think Ukraine has a unique opportunity in human capital development, in healthcare and education and others, not only to improve the service in this for Ukrainian people, but also to make it something that we can export. Not export the people like we used to do before, and millions of Ukrainians work throughout the world, but actually import the clients and provide a new level education and healthcare for the people worldwide here in Ukraine. Of course, it will require a very organized effort on part of not only government, but business and civil society and everyone else, all the stakeholders. But again, I think every crisis presents opportunities, and even though Ukraine is not in the best possible place, but we're well positioned to benefit from this and come out stronger from the crisis. So again, now from business and civil parts, working at the foundation, the Capital Market Development Foundation, and on my own startup also, it's what we need the government to continue working on and provide the rule of law and the macroeconomic stability for the business. But I think Ukraine can embrace the change and can embrace the future.
Thank you, Oksana, for your excellent statement. And then I think that I am really impressed with the strategically thinking practitioners, represented by Oksana and Pablo yesterday and Sergey. Yeah, it's a huge asset of Ukraine. If I may ask you, do we have still time for questions from the audience, or I can move to the final statement?
A little bit.
Little bit, okay. Vyacheslav or Oleksiy, did we get any questions from the audience?
Yes.
Okay, could you put one or two of them? Yeah.
Vyacheslav?
Yes.
Actually, Zbigniew, you can see them in question and answers.
Okay, in the chat. Okay, here we have. Okay, we have here. Pablo. Okay. Okay. Do you see? The question of Pablo Colazo?
We can see the questions looking at chat below on the panel below.
Okay. Okay. Well, he supports Pete's view, and then okay. I don't. Pete, do you think that do you need to answer?
No, Chair, I think, thank you. I already wanted to say he shared my concerns about the initial concept, but explained that there's an expansion that include the social and public goods into the shared value concept. I really appreciate that. I was wondering whether being part of the EU, the question about that, as an outsider, I would like to hear your view, Chair, or the two colleagues, of does that really make a difference for social progress to be in the EU or rather outside? I think that's what Edgar Aragon asked.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other question? I don't see.
I can maybe respond to the questions about the EU issue.
Okay, go ahead, Marzena.
Okay, I think that for Poland, being the EU member does matter for social progress in terms at least of ecological standards, because we have some regulations, EU regulations that we have to follow. For Poland, it's really difficult to reduce CO2 pollution. But we have to do so. We are committed to do so, even if we receive some transitional period in some regulations. We still, after some time, we have to follow the regulations. So it's kind of push from the top to do so. So it's really a benefit. And also we can have an access to experience of other countries. We can also shape Europe's future, because this conference is about facing the future, but my understanding is that we have to shape the future, not only face the future, but shape. So being an EU member, we are so we can shape the future. So that is my understanding about the future of Europe, but also the future of the world, because European Union is a bigger player than Poland, and we are quite a big country in the EU. So maybe we can discuss it, but my opinion is that we probably will not use properly or enough our voice. So we have to rethink maybe our strategy towards the EU, not to argue with EU countries, but to collaborate more. That is my view. But definitely it's good for Poland to be an EU member. And there are hard evidence that thanks to joining the EU, we really benefited economically and then socially, because we just have said that social progress is great, but to have this social progress, we need money still. So we have to do both. To advance economically, then we can help socially to fill this gap in social development, to bridge the gap between poor and wealth, etc. That's why definitely, yes, for me, EU, it's really, for Poland, brought really new ideas and new not only ideas, but new stimulus to development and to advance also in social area. Maybe Zbig can add to this as a Polish.
Thank you. I would be delighted to add. I think that the European Union, being within this family, within this network, brings a lot of value for Poland. And the value, first of all, are the institutions. And then the institutions will regulate, from human rights to sustainable development, sustainable business, fair practices, rules of laws. This is why we see now, since we have the government since 2015, we have constant struggles between current government, which is much more populist and is trying to follow a more nationalistic agenda. It's coming back in the conflict with European regulations, treating Europe as something strange. No, we are part of this family. As Marzena has said, we need to shape Europe, we need to be active, we need to improve the best practices and share also what works pretty well. This is why the issue coming back of institutions, of rule of law are very critical for the prosperity of Poland as well, Ukraine and any other countries. And this is something what we need to be aware. And then I'm not going to move further, but thanks God that we are, I mean, as a Pole, I'm happy that we are part of European Union. We need to do more contribution to make European Union better working, more efficient. The issue is the Brussels is far away from local people, and then they listen state or party radio, like media now, I mean TV, you know, and then they are not getting the right picture what those guys in Brussels are doing. But these are guys, they have to follow the democratic procedures, you know, period, because they follow the rules of law. So anyway, if I make a final statement, I would like to get back to my slides, and then I will finish within a few minutes, okay? Alexi, are you still there? Okay, Alexi, okay, good. So let's move further. Okay, I'm going down, yeah, for the next one. As I mentioned, you know, topic of our, okay, here we were talking about the different approaches, how to include the social issue. This is an example of my colleagues, Andrzej Kozminski, Adam Noga, Katarzyna Piotrowska, and Krzysztof Zagórski, who prepared the new concept of balanced development index for Europe, European OECD countries. This is a pretty long period, and you see what doesn't include, but all these elements, what we were talking, plus some others. Please, next slide. The concept based on 4 disciplines. We have economics, of course, including business cycle, political sciences, particularly political change, management, functional equilibrium, and sociology and social psychology, measuring aspiration, and social attitude. And this is something what made the foundation of balanced development index. Next, please. So they have 45 indicators in 4 domains of development: external economics, including FDI, import, export, currency exchange; internal economics, GDP, inflation, household, final consumption; social expectations. This is something what we were missing in the other indexes. I mean, they are very important. Frustration, high expectations are really, I mean, if they are not met, they create frustrated class. Business expectation, this is typical, we use it, but so my first dean in US, Professor Harlan Cleveland, was telling the next revolution will be the revolution of unmet social expectation. This is something probably what we see these days, starting with the flower revolutions. And the 4th, current social conditions: population, Gini, mortalities, and so on. Next one, the final one. What is interesting, if you look, you know, at the period 1999 was really the peak of prosperity to 2070 with the crisis. Which countries are on the top? Exactly those countries which are competitive, but also which include today development social issue. Sweden, Denmark, maybe Luxembourg too. I mean, it's very competitive, you know, they have very high GDP, but Ireland, Finland was number 1 sometime in competitiveness, the Netherlands, and so on. And then what we have on the bottom: Hungary, Greece, Poland, Portugal, Italy. Why? They had very high expectations and they were not met, period. And then let's move to the last slide, you know, to the conclusions, which I try to summarize. I think that if I would suggest, you know, I mean, Oksana made such strategic recommendation that my are coming somehow similar way along with her. First, mobilize the Ukrainian major resources, human and social capital, across country and across party lines. In this crisis, we need to unite, not fight each other, but, just unite for the nation, for the country, for the joint prosperity. Invest in institutional infrastructure. You were talking a lot to meet international standards, eliminate existing deficiencies, for instance, corruption, strengthen public participation. Third, include social, so health particularly, and education and environmental objectives to any anti-crisis or anti-recession policy. Support emerging industries based on digital, and I couldn't agree more with you, Oksana, when you were talking. We need to do leapfrogging. We cannot follow just traditional way because we will never catch up, even with our neighbors. You need to do leapfrogging, and you have the potential. And finally, participate actively in international cooperation, particularly in European Union, rebuilding broken value chain. This is what, yesterday Arthur Brice was talking, we need to, we had such spread out value chains, costly and with high risk. And they agreed, that to make this cheap labor, to take advantage in China, push the value chain so far. And then we pay the price now. So anyway, and then we should observe, and then, we will be rebuilding. We already started rebuilding value chains in Europe, and Green Deal, the social responsive transformation is a chance also to cooperate in this area. And it will change the whole region. So that would be my conclusion. I appreciate your wonderful contributions, your creative thinking, and I learned a lot from you. And I hope that IMOC network will help us. And then thank you very much, Irina, for hosting us and your great school. And I remember the founders, Professor Bogdan Havrilishin particularly. And so I am happy to be with you today. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And I